We welcome you all to the presentation of Siddhanta, Advaita and Yoga by Marshall Govindan Satchidananda, the lineage holder and founding director of Babaji Kriya Yoga Order of Acharyas, presented by Vijay Raghava on the occasion of Guru Purnima, today, July 5th, 2020. Marshall Govindan Satchidananda shares the following with us about his own life. I, like you, grew up in a Western culture before discovering yoga. I was preoccupied with materialistic pursuits and values. It was until I was at Georgetown University School of Foreign Services in Washington, D.C., beginning in 1966, that I began to ask serious existential questions. I began to find answers and to embrace spiritual values with the help of Jesuit priest there, a true mystic, and while abroad in 1968 with Salvador Dali in his home in Spain. Then I discovered Kriya Yoga at Yogananda's Lake Shrine Center near my family's home in Los Angeles, California. A few months later, in 1969, during my last year at Georgetown, I met Yogi S.A.A. Ramaiah of the Tamil Yoga Siddhanta tradition, which was completely new to me. I received initiation from Yogi Ramaiah into Kriya Yoga and began a life of dedicated Kriya Yoga sadhana in California before sending me to India in 1972. Here is a photo of myself in the courtyard of his ashram on the beach in Chennai, India in 1972. You can see Yogi Ramaiah with me nearly 50 years ago. He inspired me to study the writings of Boganathar and the other 18 Siddhas in this tradition. Since that time, I have been engaged with finding, preserving, transcribing, translating, and publishing their literary works. Beginning in 1960, he began searching for them in their original form as palm leaf manuscripts. I continued this effort with the help of a team of 6 Tamil scholars from the year 2000 to 2015, led by the late Dr. T.N. Ganapathy, and the support of an educational charity and lay order of, at present, 33 teachers of Kriya Yoga in our tradition, Acharyas, founded in 1997. I will share with you today some of what has been published by Babaji's Kriya Yoga Order of Acharyas. What is the relationship between Siddhanta, Advaita, and Yoga? I'm sure that many of you have found some answers in your practice of Yoga and Vedanta. Today, I propose to explore some questions and answers which may assist you. I invite you to participate actively in this session as a practitioner of Jnana Yoga, which is the application of the intellect to wisdom teachings and the experience of truth, or Sat. I will also share some photos and paintings to help illustrate these. No amount of words can reveal truth, but some words can point towards it, provide a glimpse, and then one must go beyond the words into the silence to realize them internally by identity. This is the approach of all spiritual traditions. The spirit has no form, so it cannot be captured in words, only in silence. But one should not make the mistake of many Western spiritual seekers today in their haste to become enlightened of ignoring or dismissing such questions. Spirituality does not mean anti-intellectual. It does not mean that one simply needs to find the most efficient technique or the best teacher or run away from the world. My teacher, Yogi Ramaiah, used to say that Siddhanta begins where Advaita ends, and that Babaji's Kriya Yoga is the practical distillation of Siddhanta. But before answering this question, it will be necessary to discuss each of these darshans or perspectives on the world and our place in it, and the Supreme Being. As we will see, each one has profound implications for how you can choose to live your life. Hopefully, this presentation will help you to better align your practices and your perspective and to avoid conflicts between them. What is Siddhanta? Siddhanta refers to the body of teachings of Indian yogic or tantric adepts, known as Siddhas or perfected masters, those who have attained some degree of perfection, or divine powers known as Siddhis. Anta means final end. Siddhanta means the final end, conclusion or goals of the Siddhas, the perfect masters. It is also derived from Chitta and Anta, meaning that it is the end of the thinking faculty. Therefore, this is the final conclusion reached at the end of thinking. During the first millennia of the Common Era, the Siddhas invented Kundalini Yoga as a powerful means of self-realization, samadhi. It was a product of their experimental efforts to find more effective ways to know the truth of things. Beyond the heavily intellectual, ritualistic, devotional, and ascetic paths, and to transform human nature. In 1985, I supervised the construction of this gopuram above the front gate of our ashram in Kanadukattam, which depicts them. Aside from the Siddhas associated with Tibetan Buddhism, Siddhas are mystics who emphasize the practice of Kundalini Yoga to realize one's potential divinity in all 5 planes of existence. They condemned institutional religion with its emphasis on temple and idol worship, ritualism, casteism, and reliance upon scriptures. They taught that one's own experience is the most reliable, authoritative source of knowledge and wisdom, and to acquire this, one must turn within to the subtle dimensions of life through yoga and meditation. Most of their writings go back 800 to 1600 years, as far back as 2nd century AD. While they existed all over India and even Tibet, the tradition to which we belong and whose literature we have researched, translated and published since 1960s is from South India and known as Tamil Kriya Yoga Siddhanta. Here on the screen, you can see the map of Tamil Nadu in South India, where the 18 Siddhas attained their ultimate states of enlightenment from my book, Babaji and the 18 Siddha Kriya Yoga traditions. Here are the photos of the temples which have since been built at these important sites. The writings of the Tamil Yoga Siddhas were in the form of poems in the vernacular language of the people rather than Sanskrit, which was known only to the topmost caste, the priestly Brahmins, who opposed them. Nowhere in the writings do they sing praises of any deities. Theologically, their teachings can be classified as monistic theism, but these do not attempt to create a philosophical system or a religion. They seek to provide practical teachings, particularly related to Kundalini Yoga, to realize truth directly, and one should avoid on the spiritual path. Sectarian affiliation has no importance for Siddhas. They feel at ease among persons of all faiths. Their approach towards truth is to first experience it in samadhi, the mystical communion of cognitive absorption and then to gradually surrender to it completely until it becomes their constant state of consciousness in the state of enlightenment. Their approach does not include attempts to build systems of philosophy or to construct religious belief systems. The Siddhas poems show no trace of shared opinions or collective thinking. Theirs is an open philosophy in which all expressions of truth were valued. Their poems and songs do not preach any doctrines. They only suggest a direction by which aspiration for a direct, intuitive, personal, and profound realization of the divine truth may be realized. Here is a 300-year-old painting of them from the Saraswati Hall Museum in Tanjore. The Siddhas, however, used a forceful vernacular language designed to shock people out of their conventional morality and egoistic delusion. They used the common language of the people rather than the elitist Sanskrit in order to reach their listeners. They urged their listeners to rebel against pretentious, empty orthodox beliefs and practices, including temple worship and rituals, caste, and petition-like prayers. They taught that at a certain stage, once the process of surrender of the ego fully embraces the intellectual plane of existence, one's own experience, rather than scriptures, becomes the ultimate authority of one's truth. The Siddha is a free thinker and a revolutionary who refuses to allow himself to be carried away by any dogma, scripture, or ritual. The Siddha is a radical in the true sense of the term, for he has personally gone to the root of things. Why is Siddhanta new? Tirumalar, probably the oldest of the Tamil Yoga Siddhas, states in his Tirumandiram, 5th century AD, that he is revealing a new yoga, Nava Yoga, containing all of the elements referred to as Kundalini Yoga by Siddhas later, and which will bring about a complete transformation of the human condition, including the physical body. Our English translation with commentary of his Tirumandiram in 3,800 pages, bound in 5 volumes. Why is Siddhanta new? It is new today because Tirumandiram and the writings of the 18 Tamil Yoga Siddhas were unknown outside of Tamil-speaking South India and Sri Lanka until they were first translated by us, and either ignored or misunderstood by Tamil scholars and pundits because of their deliberately obscure twilight language. Because of the Siddhas condemned the orthodox Brahmin pundits and priests, they also earned the ire of members of this community who condemned them as magicians or worse. Consequently, their writings were not preserved in institutional repositories like temples and manuscript libraries, but only by hereditary families of physicians, Siddhavaidyas, who kept their writings secret, applying them for medical purposes. Because of the widespread ignorance of their teachings and the popular association of the Siddhas with magicians by the Orthodox community, until recently, they have not been held in esteem in some circles of Indian society. Even the leading members of other lineages of the Kriya Yoga tradition have been unable to appreciate what is new with regards to Babaji and the 18 Siddhas. Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar, said with regards to Babaji, he is beyond my comprehension. That is, his state could not fit within the paradigm of Vedanta in which he schooled. Yogananda and others could not only conceive of him as an avatar, an incarnation of God himself and Christ-like, though Babaji has never referred to himself in such terms. In his autobiography, on the first page of the chapter, where he introduces the reader to Babaji, Yogananda mentions that, like the Siddha Agastya, He has been alive for thousands of years. Yogananda failed to grasp how close these two Siddhas really were, and that like Agastya, Babaji was a human being who became a Siddha, not God, who became an avatar. Avatars are exceedingly rare. They are not found within the Saivite tradition, but only among the Vaishnava tradition with its 10 successive avatars, including Rama and Krishna. Sri Aurobindo is one of the few sages in modern times who could appreciate who the Siddhas were, including Tirumala, Babaji, and Ramalinga. What is the goal of Siddhanta? According to the Tamil Siddhas, or the realized souls, the ultimate goal of life is complete surrender, which includes the realization of Vettaveli, vast luminous space, cosmic consciousness, and then a progressive transformation of our human nature at all levels into a divine body, or Divya Deha. I have described this in detail in my first book, Babaji, and the 18 Siddha Kriya Yoga traditions. The Tamil Siddhas relied on the individual's effort for the attainment of liberation as well as divine grace. This is represented by the double intersecting triangle of a tantric yantra, such as Sri Aurobindo logo. The Siddhas insist on the value of tantric yoga as a means for the attainment of freedom and immortality within this world rather than in some heavenly afterlife. It is not freedom or liberation from the cycle of incarnation, but freedom or liberation from the malas, or three blemishes or fetters of the human soul, which bind it like three strands in a rope and limits its inherent qualities of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Anava, ignorance of one's true identity and consequent egoism. Karma, the consequence of past actions, words, and thoughts. Maya, delusion, including its agents, partial knowledge, partial power, desires, time, and destiny. It is also freedom from gunas, the modes or constituents of nature. Rajas, the principle of dynamism, which is stimulating, mobile, and active. Tamas, the principles of inertia, which is heavy, lazy, fatiguing, doubtful, confusing. Sattva, the principles of balance and lucidity, which is calm, illuminating, wise, knowledge. Next, what is the cause of human suffering and how to overcome it? In the Yoga Sutras, the Siddha Patanjali describes 5 kleshas or causes of suffering. The first one, ignorance of our true identity, the soul, Sat Chit Ananda, seeing the impermanent as permanent, the impure as pure, the painful as pleasurable, and the non-self as the self. Second one, egoism, born of ignorance, the habit of identifying with what we are not, the physical body-mind complex, its senses, emotions, and thoughts. Third one, attachment is clinging to what is pleasurable. Fourth, aversion is clinging to suffering, fear, disliking. The last one, clinging to life or fear of death. Patanjali tells us, in their subtle form, these causes of suffering are uprooted by tracing them back to their origin by repeatedly returning to the various stages of samadhi. In their active state, they are destroyed by meditation. There's in Yoga Sutra, chapter 2, verse number 3 to 11. He tells us that the practice of Kriya Yoga has as its purpose the weakening of these causes of suffering and the cultivation of cognitive absorption, samadhi, or self-realization. He mentions this in Yoga Sutras, chapter 2, verse number 2. What is the difference between monism or non-dualism, Advaita, and dualism, Dvaita, and pluralism, theism? Webster's dictionary defines monism as the doctrine that there is only one ultimate substance or principle, that reality is an organic whole without independent parts. Also, that the world is illusionary, a mere appearance. In Sanskrit, this is also referred to as Advaita or non-duality. Adi Sankaracharya taught it in the 9th century. Ramana Maharshi is its most celebrated teacher in modern times. This is the opposite of dualism, which in Indian philosophical writings refers to reality consisting of subject and object, or consciousness and nature, Purusha and Prakriti, or Shiva and Shakti. Pluralism is defined as the theory that reality is composed of multiplicity of ultimate beings, principles, or substances. In theology or religious studies, it refers to the three eternal realities: God, the soul, and the world. Religious worship in temples and churches, prayer to a god, ceremonies are all informed by the doctrines of pluralism theology. Why are these distinctions important? These are subtle distinctions which may not seem to relate to one's daily religious experience. Thus, we may be inclined to dismiss such matters as of concern only to theologians, sadgurus, swamis, yogis, and philosophers. Yet, they are the very core of religion and cannot be regarded as trivial. They affect everyone, but they define distinct perceptions of the nature of the soul, and therefore of ourselves, of the world, and of God. They offer different spiritual goals, either to merge fully and forever in Him, a state which transcends into states of bliss, or to remain eternally separated from God, though such separation is seen positively as endless bliss. One view, monism, is unity in identity, in which the embodied soul, Jiva, actually is and becomes God, Shiva. The other view, pluralism, is unity in duality, two in one, in which the soul enjoys proximity with God but remains forever an individual soul, or three in one, because the third entity, the world or Pasha, does not ever even partly merge with God. Further, depending upon which of these perspectives one adopts, the view of the world changes. The non-dualist Advaitan sees the world as unreal, as illusionary, and consequently unimportant. One avoids becoming entangled in the world's affairs, which is dismissed as illusionary. There is no God, there is no soul. It is neither theistic or atheistic. It is monistic, meaning that there is only one. There is only one reality, referred to as Brahman, an impersonal that. The goal is moksha, freedom from the illusion, Maya, which prevents one from realizing that there is only one. Upon awakening from the illusion of Maya, one realizes continuous awareness of this non-dual reality. The prescribed means involve self-inquiry, self-remembrance. This may involve the contemplation of such phrases as, "Who am I?" or "I am that," or "I am Brahman," or the study of the Upanishads, the Vedantic commentaries on the Vedas. It may also involve taking formal vows of renunciation in a monastic order, such as the Dasami, the Swami orders founded by the leading exponent of Advaita, Adi Sankara, in the 9th century. The dualist, Dvaitan, on the other hand, recognizes that the world is real and distinct from the soul or spirit. Here is a painting of Patanjali from the ancient temple of Chidambaram, where Nataraja is worshipped. Classical yoga, based upon the dualist Samkhya philosophy, teaches that to become liberated from suffering in the world, one needs to repeatedly enter into the state of consciousness known as samadhi, cognitive absorption. In this state, one becomes aware of what is aware. One transcends egoism, false identification with the body, and the movements of the mind. The causes of suffering are gradually eliminated as a result. Instead of the intellectual approach of Advaita and Vedanta, it teaches that the truth can only be known by entering into the samadhi state of consciousness, wherein the mind becomes silent. It prescribes a progressive sadhana, spiritual practices, to prepare one to enter samadhi. This is the approach of classical yoga, tantra, some devotional bhakti, schools of Vedanta. Self-realization is the goal of classical yoga, and perfection involving transformation of human nature is the goal of tantra. It is based upon an understanding of Samkhya principle, tattvas of nature, and it is to seek to remain balanced amidst nature constituents, gunas, seeking to remain as the seer or witness, rather than identified with the body-mind personality. One's own experience is the ultimate authority rather than scripture. Jiva is becoming Siva, summarizes the monistic theistic approach of Siddhanta and Kashmir Shaivism. Identity of the individual soul, the Jiva, with that Shiva, is the ultimate end, as it is in the non-dualistic perspective. The pluralist is what one finds in theistic religions, such as the monotheistic religions of the West, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and dualistic traditions of Vedanta, those of Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, and the Shaiva Siddhanta pluralist, realist philosophy of Mekandar, prevalent in South India. Realist because Mekandar taught that God, the soul, and the world are eternally separate. In all of these, the belief in a personal God prevails. The world is not only real, but evil. The soul needs to find a way out of the world and into heaven, where God will be found. Belief in and devotion to the Lord, scriptures, rituals, prayer, and institutional religion are the means with emphasis on faith. Further, the Western religions do not include a belief in reincarnation and are commonly eschatological, meaning that they are awaiting an apocalyptic end of the world and a judgment day, in which the righteous souls will be raised to heaven and other souls will be condemned to hell for eternity. What is enlightenment and how does it relate to this discussion? The term enlightenment, of course, is an English word which until recent decades was not used in any of the Advaita traditions, except for Buddhism, where it was used to describe the ultimate state of existential freedom attained by the Buddha, known as nirvana. I don't recall ever seeing it used in traditional Advaita literature, Vedanta, Shankara, Ramana Maharshi. I am under the impression that it has come into vogue because of recent Western teachers who have been described as neo-Advaitans. I have not seen it used in the literature of classical yoga traditions nor in the Hindu Tantras. I suspect that much of the recent debate among these so-called Neo-Advaitin teachers over what is enlightenment and even a post-enlightenment phase concerns the purifying of residual manifestations of egoism, pride, anger, fear, sloth, and lust. This may occur precisely because we in the West lack not only the experience but also the terminology in English to describe the various degrees of enlightenment. My own teacher, when asked questions on this subject, being a yogi and a Tamil scholar, but not an intellectual, referred his students to the writings of the Siddhas, which were at that time largely untranslated, and otherwise those of Sri Aurobindo. The closest term I have seen related to enlightenment in the Tamil literature of South India is Vettaveli, which refers to the vast luminous space of consciousness, the blissful samadhi state, transcendental awareness, the awareness of being itself. It is a place where thoughts drop off one by one until one's consciousness exists merely as an empty expanse. It stands for the absence of subjectivity and objectivity. It stands for the emergence from time. It is the eternal now. It is a place where one transcends past, present, and future. It is a state which is not accessible to sensuous perception, a state without distinctive marks, a stainless sky. Vettaveli is emergence from time, liberation, true freedom. Pambatti Siddha says in his aphorism of Wisdom 28, verse 1, the Yoga of the 18 Siddhas, the anthology, page 475 to 476. It is that truth, the sun lying concealed in the darkness. It is formless, blemishless, self-effulgent, and omnipresent, ever blissful, beyond expression, and the inner light of those who have known it. Then the one dividing itself into Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva creates, sustains, and destroys the whole universe. Like a column of light, that is liberation, it is, may the feet of Godhead protect. While no amount of words can capture it, one may realize it by the guidance of the Guru in the practice of Kundalini Yoga as prescribed by the Siddhas, including the following elements. Learning it in person of the Guru, at the feet by awakening the energy in the Muladhara Chakra and directing it mentally upwards through the other 5 chakras above until it reaches Sahasrara. Why did you say that Siddhanta begins where Advaita ends? Yogi Ramaiah answered this question succinctly when he described Siddhanta's goal as complete surrender. While the Advaitin may surrender the perspective of the ego to the perspective of the soul in the spiritual plane of existence, the Siddhas realize that perfection in a diseased physical body or with a vital body filled with desires and emotions or a neurotic mind is no perfection. They realize that enlightenment or complete surrender or liberation cannot be limited to spiritual plane of existence. They envisioned and realized humanity's evolutionary potential and at the vanguard of its perfection, developed the means to realize a progressive process of purification, Shuddhi, involving surrender of the ego's perspective and false identification. In the spiritual body, the Anandamaya Kosha, wherein one realizes Sat Chit Ananda, Shiva Shakti, or self-realization, one becomes a saint with intimate communion with the divine. The ordinary egoistic perspective of a saint is replaced, at least in part, by an awareness of the presence of the divine. One identifies with the seer or witness, but the mind, the vital, and the physical are neither transformed nor even supportive of the surrender. However, if the mystic surrender, a communion, is limited to the spiritual plane of reality only, he may still be bound by a need to make philosophical or theological distinctions until he begins to surrender his ego in the intellectual plane. Nor will most saints remain on the physical plane long enough to complete the process of surrender, for various reasons ranging from physical health to aspiration to get away from this world of suffering. In the intellectual body, Vijnanamaya Kosha, silence rules, thinking largely ceases, and one develops Jnana Siddhi, the ability to know things intuitively, by identity, by communicate this knowledge with facility. One is a sage, guided primarily by intuitive wisdom. One has surrendered the pride of knowing, but one is still distracted by the mind, vital, and physical nature. The ego still lingers under the surrender, encompasses all planes of existence. There is always the risk of a fall, and desire, aversion, clinging to life can still create suffering. As Saint Augustine put it, Lord, help me surrender, but not yet. That is, part of a lower human nature, in particular the mental plane, the seat of fantasy and desires, and the vital plane, the seat of the emotions and desires, resist the transformation which surrender entails. In the mental body, Manomaya Kosha, wherein one develops some of the siddhis associated with the subtle senses, beginning with clairvoyance, the ability to see things at a distance in time or space, or clairaudience, the subtle sense of hearing, or clairsentience, the subtle sense of feeling. One may make prophecies, manifest the capacity to heal the sick, and know the past of others by intuitive insight, as one can enter into deep states of communion with the past, future, or any aspect of an object upon which one concentrates. One becomes a Siddha, having surrendered the pride of a person and the search for new experiences. But one may still have troublesome emotions and desires in the vital body which is not yet surrendered. In the vital body, Pranamaya Kosha, wherein it surrenders all of its desires and emotions and changes its allegiance completely from the ego towards what Sri Aurobindo called the psychic being or soul, which then completes the process and one manifests other extraordinary siddhis. One becomes a great Mahasiddha after surrendering the ego at the level of the vital plane of existence, capable of manifesting siddhis or powers, which involve nature itself. This may include materialization of objects, levitation, control of the weather, wish fulfillment, and invisibility. But the physical body has still not surrendered to the higher nature, the descent of supreme consciousness into its very sense. In the physical body, Annamaya Kosha, which becomes a divine body, a Divya Deha, glowing with golden light of immortality. A few rare Siddhas are able to surrender their egos at the level of the physical plane, wherein the limited consciousness of the cells of the body give up their ordinary metabolic purposes and become fully integrated with the supreme consciousness. These great siddhas are capable of manifesting siddhis or powers, which involve material nature itself. Their physical body glows with a golden light of this consciousness, becomes impervious to disease and death. Even for the most serious of yogis, this is difficult to conceive of if one remains tied to the old paradigm of opposition between spirit consciousness versus the body and the world. One becomes Babaji or Boganathar or Agastya, and one's perfection is no longer limited by the ignorance of the physical human nature. One is invulnerable to disease and death. If one leaves the physical plane, it is not because the physical nature forces one to leave. Throughout the writings of the Siddhas, we may see descriptions of this level of divine transformation. Why do Siddhas consider themselves no one special and therefore provide little or no detail on their personal lives? While they have lived principally in India, Tibet, China, and Southeast Asia, by their own accounts, the Mahasiddhas have traveled all over the world. They choose to remain far from public view in such remote places as the Himalayas and in the south of India, the Kataragi Mountains and Koli Mountains. You can see the Chaturagiri Mountains in Saturagiri, Tamil Nadu on the screen. The Siddhas, Patanjali and Boganathar tells us that until the old habits of identifying with the body and mind are completely uprooted by repeatedly returning to the source of consciousness, the ego is still able to delude, even at times, the saint or Siddha. They may, for example, use their powers to attract public attention. However, once a surrender occurs, even at the physical level, the ego is vanished forever. One is literally nothing special because one is only identified with that which permeates everything, pure consciousness. Certain Siddhas through the ages have reached this state, and these Siddhas place no emphasis or importance on their person, their powers, their biography, or their activities because those were not theirs. These enlightened beings were instruments of the divine force, and light and all action and rest that moved through them were due to the divine power. It is therefore no coincidence that we know with so little certainty what the Siddhas did or what were the details of their personal lives. But we do know their wisdom teachings. It is the wisdom they attained which they have taken pains to leave for us. It is this consciousness, this wisdom, this experience of the ultimate reality that they consider to be of utmost importance because it shows the way back to the kingdom of heaven, as did Jesus in his parables, by emphasizing the person of the teacher over the teaching itself. Religions such as Christianity and Buddhism are formed. Buddha was not a Buddhist. Jesus was not a Christian. The teachings of Jesus, his parables, were replaced by religion about his person, despite the fact that history provides no historical details about him or his life. Buddha, who as a Hindu, sought to replace ritualism with teachings on how to avoid suffering because an object of worship. You can read about this in my book, Jesus and Yoga Siddhas, and our website. The Siddha may be called upon to remain in the same physical body for some indefinite period of time, or even to transmigrate into another body, or to dematerialize, or to ascend as Jesus did, or to be in more than one visible body at the same period of time in two separate places. There is the well-documented example of Ramalinga Swamigal of the late 19th century, whose body cast no shadow in the sun, whose body could not be harmed or photographed despite repeated attempts when he posed with a group before expert photographers, and whose body disappeared from the earth quite dramatically in a flash of violet light. Since then, Ramalinga Swamigal has been reported to have reappeared on the occasions to assist devotees in need. Children and devotees in South India to this day continue to sing many of the more than 40,000 poems and songs he wrote, extolling the path of supreme grace light, Arut Perun Jyoti. We also have the examples of Kriya Babaji, described in the autobiography of a yogi and the voice of Babaji, a trilogy of Kriya Yoga. And there are examples of Siddhas, Agastya, and Boganathar, and of Sri Aurobindo, who left detailed accounts of their own process of surrendering at the level of physical body and various forms of immortality. As Mircea Eliade states, the Siddhas are those who understood liberation as the conquest of immortality. What is the significance of Siddhis or yogic miraculous powers? The Siddhis are described in detail in the 3rd chapter of the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali. They are the result of samyama or communion, defined by him as a combination of concentration, meditation, and cognitive absorption, samadhi. Like anything, they can become an obstacle if they become a means of fulfilling some egoistic attachment. However, when viewed from the perspective of Siddhanta, they are byproducts of a process of divinization of human nature, in which the lower nature, driven by the ego, is replaced or surrendered to a higher nature driven by the secret, highest self, Ishvara or Purushottama. This process has been described in detail in the writings of the 18 Siddhas and Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. The writings of the 18 Tamil Yoga Siddhas, particularly those of Siddhar, Boganathar, and Tirumala, provides rich and inspired first-person accounts of this process. They also describe the methods of Kundalini Yoga, especially related to the breath, to empower, and accelerate this process. This process was also described in voluminous detail by Sri Aurobindo. However, he envisioned it as a means of accelerate the evolution of humanity as a whole once the supramental had descended within a sufficient number of advanced practitioners of an integral yoga. He summarized this yoga in 3 words: aspiration, rejection, and surrender. What is the relationship between Babaji's Kriya Yoga and Siddhanta? Babaji's Kriya Yoga is distillation of Siddhanta. It's a 5-fold path, combines the cultivation of dispassion and meditation in classical yoga as described in Patanjali Yoga Sutras with the Kundalini Yoga of the Siddhas. The 5-fold paths include: first one, the Kriya Hatha Yoga. Kriya Hatha Yoga includes asanas, physical postures of relaxation, bandhas, muscular locks, and mudras, psychophysical gestures, all of which bring about greater health, peace, and the awakening of the principal energy channels, the nadis, and centers, the chakras. Babaji has selected a particular effective series of 18 postures which are taught in stages and in pairs. One cares for the physical body, not for its own sake, but as a vehicle or a temple of the divine. Kriya Kundalini Pranayama is a powerful breathing technique to awaken one's potential power and consciousness and to circulate it through the 7 principal chakras between the base of the spine and the crown of the head. It awakens the latent faculties associated with the 7 chakras and makes one a dynamo on all 5 planes of existence. Kriya Dhyana Yoga is a progressive series of meditation techniques to learn the scientific art of mastering the mind, to cleanse the subconscious, to develop concentration, mental clarity and vision, to awaken the intellectual, intuitive and creative faculties, and to bring about the breathless state of communion with God, samadhi and self-realization. Kriya Mantra Yoga is the silent mental repetition of subtle sounds to awaken the intuition, the intellect and the chakras. The mantra becomes a substitute for the I, centered mental chatter, and facilitates the accumulation of great amounts of energy. The mantra also cleanses habitual subconscious tendencies. Kriya Bhakti Yoga is the cultivation of the soul's aspiration for the divine. It includes devotional activities and service to awaken unconditional love and spiritual bliss in the spiritual body. It may include chanting and singing. Gradually, all of one's activities becomes soaked with sweetness as the beloved is perceived in all. What is the value of the human body in relationship to one's spiritual development? The Siddhas refer to 3 great blessings in life. First, to be born as a human being, which is exceedingly rare. Only when one is incarnated on the physical plane can the soul grow in wisdom and purify itself of the blemishes or fetters. Second, to find the spiritual path, which is also very rare, with all of its distractions to the 5 senses and the confusion of the mind and intellect. Third, to find one's spiritual perceptor, the Guru, whose teachings and example guide the soul to liberation. Once found, progress towards the goal can become rapid if one keeps the physical body healthy and applies oneself to the spiritual discipline and teachings prescribed by the Guru and his traditions. The Siddhas viewed the body as the temple of God, and so they made every effort to maintain its health and even to extend its life so that one would have sufficient time to complete the process of complete surrender to the divine, which was their ultimate goal. As tantrics, they sought to transform, to perfect their human nature. Perfection, they realized, could not be limited to the spiritual plane. Enlightenment in a diseased body or neurotic mind and desire-filled vital body was no perfection. Recognizing that the physical body was ignorant of its potential and therefore subject to metabolic decay and disease, and using the remarkable powers mentioned earlier, the Siddhas undertook a systematic study of nature and its elements. From what they were able to grasp, they developed a highly systematic medicine. They developed a system of medicine known as Siddha medicine, with many uniquely effective remedies, which is still widely practiced in South India. They wrote many medical treatises on longevity, which today form the foundation for one of the 4 systems of medicine recognized by the government of India, recognizing that they were in a race against time to complete the physical body's transformation before its demise. They also developed unique herbal and material formula known as Kaya Kalpa to extend the life of the body. But they believed that only Kundalini Pranayama, breathing exercises, would ultimately complete this process. The Siddha Tirumular provides some insight into this question of longevity in his definition of medicine. Medicine is that which treats the disorders of the physical body. Medicine is that which treats the disorders of the mind. Medicine is that which prevents illness. Medicine is that which enables immortality. Here is a painting of Tirumala from the ceilings of the Chidambaram temple, the only temple where Nataraja, dancing Shiva, is worshipped. The Siddhas discovered why the body ages and developed steps to prevent aging. They, for instance, saw that the span of all animal life is inversely proportional to the rate of breathing. That is, the slower the breathing, the longer the life. And conversely, the faster the breathing, the shorter is the life. Animals like sea tortoise, whale, dolphin, and parrot, which take the fewest number of breaths per minute, have lives that are much longer than humans. Whereas the dog, the mouse, which breathe 5 times faster than the human average, have 1/5 their longevity. The Siddha suggests that if one breathes 10 times or less per minute, she should live for 100 years. It is when breathing becomes agitated or habitually much faster than this that one's lifespan is reduced. Why is it important to understand Siddhanta, Advaita, and Yoga? They are roadmaps to spiritual liberation or freedom from the suffering inherent in human nature. They inform our practice, our sadhana. In the West, most persons remain ignorant of the teachings and simply attempt to do various practices without understanding the philosophic purpose or goals. So, when Westerners get bored or dissatisfied with one practice, they look for another. They collect techniques. It is like getting into a series of automobiles and cruising around with no road map and no way to go. In India, until recently, most educated persons were knowledgeable of some aspects of the philosophical schools or darshans, but rarely, if at all, practiced any spiritual techniques or yoga. Practice, informed by the underlying teachings, ensures progress towards the realization of one's sankalpa or intention. By understanding Siddhanta, Advaita, Yoga, and other spiritual paths, one can decide what goal one wants to pursue and create the firm intention necessary to realize it. Even if your goal is no goal at all, simply to be, as long as you are in the world, you will have to act. So your actions need to be informed by wisdom if you wish to avoid suffering and to cause suffering to others. I invite you to explore these teachings further by studying the presented publications, which you will find on our website, bookstore, which provides a view into the book, or by joining our seminars with our acharyas worldwide. Or they can be studied during a visit or stay in one of our ashrams. So this is the ashram in Quebec, Canada. headquarters of Babaji Kriya Yoga Order of Acharyas for the West in Canada. This is the ashram in Badrinath, India, Himalayas. These are our websites, babajikriyayoga.net, tirumandiram.net. For India, babajisKriyayoga.in. We come to the end of the presentation. Let's do one Babaji mantra all together. Inhale deeply. Om Kriya Babaji